breaking news stirred up major buzz last night. Donald Trump reportedly signed an executive order to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve, along with a U.S. digital asset stockpile. This move has sparked heated discussions across the crypto space. I've already covered the finer details in a previous video, but today's focus is something a bit more intriguing, especially for XRP holders. I've been trading crypto successfully for over 380 days, consistently closing every month in profit. In the last 90 days alone, my followers have earned over $29,000 in profits by copying my trades. Want to see my verified stats? Click the first link in the profile description and start copying my trades for free today. Speculation is running wild. With Trump previously making positive remarks about XRP, many are wondering, could XRP find its way into this digital stockpile? And if so, how? The community is buzzing with theories, with some suggesting Ripple itself might step in to fund the effort. The idea raises plenty of questions, but one thing's for sure. This is a twist no one saw coming. Alright, now this is where things get really interesting. Sure, if someone random in the crypto community throws out an idea, it might spark a fun conversation. But when a former Ripple employee suggests that Ripple could potentially fund a US XRP reserve, or even contribute to a strategic crypto reserve, it takes the discussion to a whole new level. And now, with terms like digital asset stockpile being tossed around again, the concept feels even more intriguing. So, let's dive into it and break it all down. But before we go any further, let me be upfront. I'm not a financial expert, this isn't financial advice, and you definitely shouldn't make any trading decisions based on what I say. I'm just a crypto enthusiast who loves making YouTube videos about this stuff for fun. Got it? Great. Now, let's get caught up on some key context you might have missed. Here's the headline from Reuters. Trump signs order to establish strategic Bitcoin reserve. Last night's news was interesting, but this headline from March 3rd, courtesy of Reuters, deserves a closer look. Trump names cryptocurrencies in strategic reserve, sending prices soaring. Notably, XRP was highlighted, having recently been referred to by the president as a strategic reserve. A few days later, it's now being called a digital asset stockpile. That's a bit of a rebrand, but what's also worth noting is Bitcoin's new special treatment. It's getting its own strategic reserve. Here's the scoop. U.S. President Donald Trump signed an executive order on Thursday to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve, just ahead of a meeting with cryptocurrency industry leaders at the White House. According to the White House crypto czar, billionaire David Sacks, the reserve will be funded using Bitcoin forfeited in criminal or civil asset seizure cases. Sacks shared the news on X, the social media platform formerly known as Twitter. Now, let's clear up some confusion. This doesn't mean the US government is about to start dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin. The executive order makes it clear any potential purchases, if they even happen, will be minimal. Why? The government isn't looking to deepen the budget deficit, and considering how far we are from a balanced budget, major acquisitions aren't on the table anytime soon. For now, the US is simply reclassifying the Bitcoin it already owns into a newly minted strategic Bitcoin reserve. And honestly, while it's not groundbreaking, it's a step forward that's pretty exciting to see. Cryptocurrencies getting a formal nod on a global stage feels like progress. The United States government currently holds about 200,000 Bitcoin, a staggering amount. Though an audit is underway to pin down the exact figure, the reason they have any Bitcoin at all boils down to forfeiture proceedings. Essentially, people used Bitcoin for illegal activities, got caught, and the government seized those assets. Bad guys lose, Bitcoin wins, kind of. Interestingly, any cryptocurrencies the government holds in its digital stockpile aren't bought, they're acquired. This has been explicitly stated, no purchasing Bitcoin or other cryptocurrencies. However, they do seem to have plans to stockpile Bitcoin specifically, using creative workarounds that won't impact the federal budget. But for other cryptocurrencies like XRP, that's a hard no. Which raises an intriguing question. Does the US government already own XRP? Maybe. Illegal activity could have led to assets like XRP being forfeited, just like with Bitcoin. Court cases and forfeitures could mean they've quietly acquired some along the way. Nobody knows for sure, but it's definitely a question on lots of people's minds right now. And honestly, would it even be surprising if that were the case? So, could the United States government actually hold some XRP? It's possible, but even if they do, I doubt it's anything substantial. A massive stockpile? Unlikely. I'd be surprised if that were the case. This means the digital stash probably isn't going to shake the world anytime soon. Sure, it's interesting, exciting even, but maybe not the earth-shattering revelation some were hoping for. That said, it's still fantastic news. This sets a promising tone. and I'm thrilled to see it happening. It's also Trump delivering on a campaign promise, which is worth acknowledging. But when it comes to XRP specifically, is this going to revolutionize supply and demand dynamics? At least in the short term, it doesn't seem like it. Long term, though, this could lay the foundation for something far bigger in the years, maybe decades, ahead. That's a conversation worth having. Now, here's where it gets intriguing. A former Ripple employee hinted that Ripple itself could, presumably might, invest in this fund. Things get juicier with a post from Fox Business journalist Charles Gasparino. Just hours before news broke about the strategic Bitcoin reserve, created via executive order, Gasparino dropped an interesting nugget. At 3:13 p.m. Central Time on Thursday, Charles Gasparino dropped a scoop. Sources reveal the White House is gearing up to further classify its so-called strategic crypto reserve, potentially later today or tomorrow. The buzz? It's likely about funding, specifically the challenge of purchasing digital coins with taxpayer money, which would require congressional approval. Spoiler, that's nearly impossible. Possible workarounds? They might seed it with confiscated crypto, like the 200,000 seized bitcoins from alleged criminals, or explore the sovereign wealth fund idea, as Christian Carlo suggested. Stay tuned. The story's still developing, and that's exactly what went down. Those 200,000 seized bitcoins? They're officially under U.S. ownership, set to be HODLED indefinitely. Honestly, that's fantastic news. But here's the real question. What about XRP? Could there be a secret stash confiscated from bad actors that we're unaware of? Maybe. If I find out, you'll hear it here first on my channel. Right now, it feels like nobody truly knows what's going on. Honestly, I'm not even sure the Trump administration has a clear picture yet. They're planning an audit, not just on the government's Bitcoin holdings, but on everything in crypto. Yes, everything. Different agencies might be holding different cryptocurrencies, and it's like trying to piece together a giant puzzle with mismatched communication between departments. Eventually, we'll get answers, but as of now, it's all up in the air. Meanwhile, former Ripple employee Sean McBride weighed in on a post by Charles Gasparino. Sean suggested, or a company like Ripple could fund the reserve with the XRP they have in escrow. And in a classic online jab, he added a clown emoji and called him Clown Boy. To be fair, Ripple could technically do that. It's definitely an option. But it's a complicated mix of speculation, confirmation bias, and some spicy internet banter. How much would it actually be? Are we talking $100,000 worth of XRP? Maybe $1 million? $10 million? Or even $1 billion in XRP? What's the magic number? And what would the threshold look like? Just to be clear, I'm highly skeptical Ripple would ever do this in a meaningful way, if at all. But hey, it's an interesting thought experiment, and I'd love to hear what you all think in the comments below. Is this even remotely plausible? I don't see this becoming a reality, though I admit Ripple could technically do it if they wanted to. Let's face it, any company or individual owning an asset can give it away, whether to another person, a business, or even the government. That's just a fact. Sean McBride, a former Ripple employee, seems to think there's a reasonable chance this could happen. Now, I don't have insider knowledge, so maybe he's onto something. But from my perspective as an outsider, this idea feels like a stretch, especially when you tie it to the fallout of the SEC v. Ripple lawsuit. Take, for example, a post from Good Morning Crypto making what they're calling a bold prediction. Honestly, I'm not buying it. I'd love to be proven wrong because, frankly, it would be fascinating to see this play out. But for now, I'm calling it unlikely. What do you think? Am I way off here? Let me know. I'm pretty skeptical about this idea, but let me share what he proposed. Bold prediction. Ripple could settle the SEC case for $125 million, paid entirely in XRP tokens, and then XRP gets added to the US reserve. Intriguing, right? But is this even remotely plausible? Here's my gut reaction when I first read it. Ripple shareholders would absolutely hate this. Ripple has a fiduciary duty to its investors, so the thought of shelling out $125 million in XRP, that's a hard sell, especially since this figure seems tied to Judge Torres's ruling in the SEC versus Ripple case. Do you think shareholders would celebrate such a move? And let's not ignore the mystery circling this case. Why haven't we seen the appeals process wrapped up yet? Remember, both sides, Ripple and the SEC, have appeals lingering in the air. Interestingly, some XRP community attorneys speculate that Ripple may actually prefer the delay. Why? Perhaps they're holding out for terms that work in their favor. If anything, Ripple's likely aiming to slash that 125 million settlement figure as close to zero as they can. Sure, there's already a judgment against them, but Ripple and the SEC can't just decide the fine evaporates. The stakes are high, and the behind-the-scenes chess match continues. That's just not something they can do. I actually made a whole video on this topic, so I won't dive too deep here, but both Attorney Hogan and Attorney Murphy have discussed this idea. Technically, Sure, you could explore that route and try to make it disappear, but the reality is, it doesn't work that way. This isn't just a casual agreement between the SEC and Ripple. There's an actual judgment in place, and you can't simply wave a magic wand to erase that. So, realistically, there's no pathway for this to happen. Plus, let's be honest, Ripple shareholders would not be on board with a move like that. Even if Ripple decided to voluntarily hand over $125 million, I can't imagine shareholders cheering. Keep in mind, Ripple hasn't had their IPO yet, but you can still buy shares of Ripple on secondary markets if you're an accredited investor. They do have shareholders, and with that comes fiduciary responsibilities. I just don't see a scenario where this makes sense. Interestingly, someone from the XRP community, TW Laurel Crest, reached out to Good Morning Crypto about this. They pointed out that the reserve is strictly for seized crypto and has nothing to do with the government buying any. That explanation triggered a sell-off reaction, and Good Morning Crypto responded saying, "This would be seized crypto. My question is, how would that even work? The government just gets to seize crypto? Let's not forget, the Bitcoin the government holds was taken from actual criminals. Ripple isn't a criminal organization. If Ripple pays fines, it's coming out of their company treasury, not from some stash of XRP that gets confiscated. That's not how this works. You don't just get to reach in and grab their XRP. It's not monopoly money. So, here's the thing. I wrote to him and made it clear. Judge Torres's order was for $125 million. Not $125 million worth of XRP. Big difference. And honestly, it would be downright unethical if the government tried to pull some sneaky maneuver to swipe XRP from Ripple. No one should stand behind something so outrageous. I mean it. If anyone thinks it's a good idea for Ripple's XRP to just get snatched up in the US, count me out. That's beyond unreasonable. Absolutely not. And let's be real, that's not what the judge ordered. The penalties in the order were specific. It was $125 million, plain and simple. You can't just twist it into something else. Like imagine saying, oh, how about instead of $125 million, we give you $125 million worth of cupcakes? Really? Does that sound reasonable? Number? It doesn't work that way. And let's not forget, this money doesn't just end up in some random reserve. These funds are already allocated, already spoken for. They don't magically get redirected to something else. That's not how any of this operates. The entire idea of it is absurd and, frankly, offensive. If the government were to overstep and seize assets in this way, I'd be disgusted, especially when there was already a clear order from the judge with no fraud found. It would be a slap in the face to justice, plain and simple. You can't just go around grabbing people's assets. Nope, absolutely not. Seizing XRP from Ripple? Not a chance. Now, if Ripple decided to donate some voluntarily, maybe as part of a marketing strategy, sure, that could happen. But $125 million? No way. You could spend a fraction of that and still get the same buzz and headlines. So why blow $125 million? You wouldn't. And let's be real, it wouldn't even make a dent in the short-term supply and demand dynamics. It just wouldn't. This whole idea is pure silliness. Sure, it's fun to talk about, but I see where people are coming from with this, and I just can't agree. Most of the arguments supporting it just don't convince me. Respectfully, I don't think it's realistic. And hey, we can agree to disagree. Maybe you're one of the folks who thinks this idea makes sense, and that's fine. But for me, I just can't get behind it. Alright, let's set the record straight. There's no way XRP is getting seized, especially since there's zero legal basis for that nonsense. Absolutely not happening. It's outrageous to even consider. Ripple is holding all the cards here, people. The so-called crypto war? Over. Donald Trump himself has said it. That means the SEC is ready to wrap this up, but only on Ripple's terms. And Ripple? They're not going to settle unless the deal is sweet. That's my take, and it lines up with what the XRP community's legal experts are saying. Makes sense, right? Now, let's talk numbers. There's no way we're talking about $125 million of XRP stuck in a reserve. Let's be realistic, and forcing that outcome? Completely unacceptable. It's gross just thinking about it. But hey, this idea is buzzing all over the community tonight, especially since a former Ripple employee floated it. So I figured I'd throw it out there for discussion. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Oh, and just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. Don't make any buying or selling decisions based on what I say. That's a terrible idea. Play it smart, folks.